know what we're getting from her every single night. Her to be aggressive on both sides of the floor, be an opportunity basketball player. It's really easy to play with people like that.
And then one last one, Lee had a big...
In the charged atmosphere of the Brooklyn Academy of Music on that unforgettable April night in 2024, where the lights gleamed with the weight of history and anticipation, while cameras flashed endlessly in the hands of journalists and fans alike, WNBA Commissioner Kathy Engelbert prepared to announce the first overall pick of the draft. A moment that had been years in the making for those present, but one that carried a far more profound depth for the Clark family. Because in the front row sat, and Mitzi Clark, gripping her daughter's hand with a force that spoke not only of pride but of a lifetime of sacrifices that had been buried beneath silence. And as her heart thundered against her chest, she relived 22 years of small choices, quiet compromises, and unspoken promises that had led to the singular second when the name Caitlin Clark echoed through the theater like a chime resonating across time. And though the embrace between mother and daughter lasted only a few brief seconds, the world seemed to stop, the flashbulbs capturing them in that tender moment that millions would later study on screens. And while fans celebrated the public triumph, few could have guessed that the words and whispered into Caitlin's ear at that exact instant held not just comfort but revelation. Words so intimate and profound that lip readers would later share them across social media, triggering discussions that rippled through basketball circles, parenting forums, and even broader, cultural conversations about family, sacrifice, and maternal love, because they revealed truths that had been carefully hidden for over 2 decades. Truths about what it means for a mother to shield her child not only from the outside world but from the unbearable weight of expectation. Truths about what she had chosen to give up in order to ensure that Caitlin could live her dream as freely as possible, and most importantly, truths about a private promise she had made to herself when Caitlin was only 5 years old. A promise that had served as the compass of their shared journey, shaping every decision and every sacrifice even when no one else was watching. The Clark family's story is, of course, inseparable from basketball, yet to reduce it to merely a sports journey would be to strip it of its essence. For their bond was not built on statistics or trophies, but on quiet mornings, long car rides, whispered encouragements, and the endless patience of a mother who had herself grown up in the shadow of athletic excellence. For Anne was not only the mother of Caitlin, but also the daughter of Bob Nitze, the legendary Dowling Catholic coach, and from her childhood she had understood the demands of sport, the highs of victory and the devastation of loss, the relentless cycles of discipline, and the way young athletes often carried more pressure than adults realized. And so when Caitlin first picked up a basketball at the age of 5 in the driveway of their home in West Des Moines, Iowa, the sound of the ball bouncing against the concrete was not just another childish pastime but the beginning of a new life, one she could never have. Fully anticipated yet instinctively understood would alter the course of everything. At first it seemed simple. A mother encouraging her child's natural coordination, applauding her enthusiasm, fetching the ball when it rolled into the street. Yet slowly the spark of extraordinary talent began to reveal itself, and with it came the creeping weight of decisions that would stretch across years. Financial decisions, career choices, family dynamics, all interwoven with a single guiding principle that, and cemented within herself, Caitlin's potential would never be limited by her mother's fears, her mother's ambition, or even her mother's comfort. It was when Caitlin was 8 years old, already dazzling local coaches with her instinctive shooting and uncanny vision, that and received a phone call which could have altered the trajectory of her own life. An offer for a position that would double her salary and propel her forward in her marketing career. A role that would have brought financial ease but demanded extensive travel, meaning missed practices, absent weekends, and the absence of a constant presence that Caitlin needed more than anything. And didn't hesitate long, though she carried the weight of the decision alone, never even telling her husband Brent in full detail at the time. She turned it down, silently tucking away her own professional aspirations with the reasoning that some things mattered more than money or prestige. And when Caitlin, overhearing parts of a phone call, innocently asked, "Mom, why didn't you take that job?" and smiled and replied with a line that would come to embody the next 15 years of her life. Because some things are more important than money. What Caitlin could not yet grasp was that her mother had just made a lifelong vow, one that meant she would quietly sacrifice opportunities, comforts, and sometimes her own peace of mind to ensure that Caitlin could chase her dream unburdened. And though she was too young then to understand, That promise became the foundation upon which everything else rested. As Caitlin grew into her teenage years, the dimensions of that promise expanded. By then, her reputation had grown far beyond Iowa, and whispers of her potential reached the ears of college recruiters nationwide, bringing with it a flurry of attention, expectations, and pressures that might have crushed another young athlete had it not been for Anne's unwavering presence. She became not merely a mother but a shield, stepping into roles of manager, negotiator, counselor, and protector, managing calls, emails, and conversations so that Caitlin could remain focused on the simple purity of the game she loved. Behind the scenes, however, challenges multiplied. Elite AU tournaments required constant travel, costly hotel stays, and endless expenses that stretched the family's finances to breaking point. One evening during Caitlin's junior year, when the cost seemed insurmountable, and made yet another decision that she kept hidden from her daughter. She quietly took out a second mortgage on their home, a risk that could have jeopardized their security, but one she rationalized as essential because her daughter's opportunities depended on it. When Caitlin, noticing the strain, asked gently, "Mom, are you sure we can afford all this travel?" and forced a reassuring smile, masking the knot of anxiety in her chest, and simply said, "Don't worry about money, sweetheart," because the last thing she wanted was for Caitlin to carry guilt over the sacrifices being made on her behalf. Such moments, invisible to the outside world, accumulated over years. The mornings when in rows at 4 a.m. to drive across Iowa for early tournaments, the nights spent ironing jerseys, booking last-minute flights, or scraping together the money to cover one more camp fee. The countless holidays restructured around tournament schedules, the friendships she allowed to drift away because basketball dictated their lives, and the career she carefully kept subdued because ambition for herself could not coexist with the all-encompassing mission of supporting Caitlin's. These sacrifices, however, were never spoken of, never dangled before her daughter as leverage. For Anne believed that true love, especially maternal love, is measured not by how loudly one declares sacrifice, but by how quietly one bears it without complaint. And so on that April night in Brooklyn, when Caitlin's name was called as the #1 overall pick, when the arena roared and confetti fell, and the cameras captured the radiant smile of a young woman stepping into history, Anne's whispered words were not merely congratulations but confession, a release of the promise she had held for 22 years. "I told myself when you were 5 I'd never let anything get in your way," she murmured into Caitlin's ear, her voice trembling with both pride and relief. "And now you've done it. You've taken it further than I ever dreamed." It was a moment of revelation not just for Caitlin, who for the first time glimpsed the invisible weight her mother had carried, but also for Anne herself, who allowed a sliver of her hidden sacrifices to surface, not as a burden placed upon her daughter, but as a truth finally spoken, a truth that transformed their journey from one of silent strength into one of shared understanding. For the world, it was a story about a draft, about a young star entering professional basketball with the eyes of the nation upon her. But for the Clark family, it was something deeper, something rooted in the unseen choices of a mother who had, year after year, quietly given away pieces of herself.
It's just really exciting, and for us to get one on the road against a really good team, and then to dig down and get stops at the end of the game. I know JJ got the game-winning stop.
On that unforgettable April night in Brooklyn, when the atmosphere of the WNBA draft was charged with electricity and anticipation, and Nitzy Clark sat hand in hand with her daughter Caitlin, her heart heavy with the weight of more than 2 decades of sacrifice, love, and determination that had quietly shaped this moment. As Commissioner Kathy Engelbert announced Caitlin Clark as the #1 overall pick, the embrace between mother and daughter became more than just a public display of pride. It was the culmination of a hidden journey of sacrifice and strength that very few people truly understood, and had given so much over the years. Opportunities abandoned, financial struggles endured, sleepless nights spent worrying. Also, Caitlin could have the chance to chase her dream. From the time Caitlin first picked up a basketball in their driveway at 5 years old, and had made an unspoken promise to herself that she would never allow her own ambitions or financial constraints to stand in the way of her daughter's potential. This meant turning down high-paying jobs that required too much travel, quietly taking on part-time evening work to cover mounting expenses, and even risking the family's financial stability by taking out a second mortgage to fund Caitlin's AAU tournaments. Caitlin had sensed the sacrifices at times, innocently asking questions like, "Mom, are you sure we can afford all this?" But always deflected with a reassuring smile and the words, "Your job is to play basketball. Mine is to make sure you have every opportunity." During Caitlin's college years at Iowa, as she rose to national prominence, Anne's role expanded from mother to protector, confidant, and steady presence in the storm of media attention and scrutiny. She drove hours just to sit with her daughter over dinner when the pressure became overwhelming, whispering reminders of her strength when Caitlin doubted herself, quietly carrying her own fears while never allowing her daughter to feel them, and endured cruel social media comments about her daughter's performance, staying up nights worrying, yet never showing Caitlin anything but unwavering belief. When Iowa fell to LSU in the national championship game, Caitlin wept, apologizing to her mother for not finishing the story they had dreamed of, but held her tightly and told her she had nothing to prove, that the joy of the journey had always outweighed any outcome. By Caitlin's senior year, as records fell and history was made, and was always in the stands, her tears flowing freely when Caitlin broke Pete Maravich's legendary scoring record, knowing that every hidden sacrifice had led to this. And on draft night, when the world was watching, and whispered words that would later go viral, not because of their simplicity, but because of the profound truth they carried. "I'm proud of you, but more than that, I'm grateful. Grateful to be your mom. Grateful for every sacrifice that brought us here. Grateful that you never saw how much I worried because you were too busy being brave." In that moment, Caitlin understood the depth of her mother's love, replying that she had always felt every ounce of belief and support, even if she hadn't known the details. Their embrace became more than celebration. It was recognition of the unbreakable bond they had forged through years of resilience, devotion, and shared dreams. Anne's final whisper that night, "This is not the end, only the beginning, and I'll always be here to remind you of your strength," became the compass Caitlin would carry into her professional career, proof that behind every great athlete often stands a parent who chose love over comfort, sacrifice